What is up, folks, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. And we are kicking off a new month here. Today is Monday, November 1st. Should be an exciting month. October was a very good month as well. Plenty of interesting price action over the weekend we could talk about. Some NFTs making some real sharp moves like Mana and Engine. Also, this morning, we got some assets ripping it up like DOT. So plenty to talk about today. And November is looking like it could be off to a hot start. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, CJ, how are you doing here today?
Good. Interest payment day for all Voyager customers. See Chris Vincentini saying that in the chat. Good morning, Chris. Yeah, great weekend. Really excited about Bitcoin's price action and what we're seeing. I mean, we had a tremendous, not only weekly close, but also monthly close that we'll take a look at in the charts in just a moment. But there's some weird stuff going on. I mean, Squid Game, we were just talking about that, dropping 99%. People looking at the Tesla source code, predicting that they might accept SHIB for payments. So just rumors as of now, but we'll see what happens. How are you doing today, Monty?
Feeling pretty good, CJ. October, one of my favorite months of the year, but based on what we're seeing here, I think November could be an even better month. Like you said, lots of interesting stuff happening in terms of crypto, lots of focus on the crypto markets in general, which is typically something we see towards, the end of this market cycle when things start to get parabolic. So very exciting times. Bitcoin kind of staggering around that 60K level, but like we said, plenty of alts ripping while Bitcoin kind of stagnates a little bit. So plenty to discuss today. And I think that this is going to be a very exciting month. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, with that being said, why don't we get into Bitcoin and a little bit of analysis? Not only do I want to check out those more macro closes, but I also do want to look at some of the larger data models that we do like to check in on. So starting from the top here, daily chart, we talked about how we had a nice bounce from that support level. Quality supply absorption, last week when we had that liquidation down to the moving average, we're still seeing it again today with some nice resilience off of those support levels. So just a lot of supply absorption collectively. Ideally, what we want to see here now that we've created new all-time highs is one, it's promising that we're holding that support level, but we want to see a consolidation above the previous recent high so that price can then push into the next Fibonacci targets, namely 85K by early December or mid-December, I think is what we're lining up for. Let's go to the weekly chart because we did just have a close. And you can see we do have these wicks that are pretty indicative of supply absorption. And we'll get into some more of the entities that are actually absorbing that supply. But same type of idea, a consolidation at that recent peak likely leads to a push higher up to that next Fibonacci level, which is lining up at 85K. So that's going to be very interesting. And I think that's where we're going when we enter the December month. We'll have to see what happens during November. I plan on, just expecting some sideways consolidation, at least for the next week. But if we do have that catalyst that gets us above 63, 64K, things could get very interesting here for Bitcoin. And one of the reasons why, I'm very bullish on this is because of our monthly close. When you see a bullish engulfing candle like that after quite a while, it is very indicative of bullish continuation. I mean, this isn't something I had kind of looked at previously, but just anytime you get these bullish engulfing candles that are just really bullish, coming off the back, breaking a recent all-time high, we've historically seen a lot of bullish continuation and parabolic price action following things like that. So I think this is a tremendously promising close. I mean, It's literally about $17,000 this entire candle if it started at roughly 42, 43K. So quite a move within the last month. And I think it bodes very well going into, kind of the end of year here. More importantly, though, let's take a look at whale holdings and whale wallets specifically, because while we saw that liquidation and capitulation event from the shorter term holders last week, we're actually still seeing an increase in whale wallets and whale holdings. So if we go all the way back from, looking back starting here in July, we have had a consistent uptrend in whale holdings. Like right here, we saw a little bit of distribution, a little bit of profit taking from the larger term holders. But overall, I wouldn't let this interim chop shake out your convictions for what's coming in the long term. Because if we look at the more macro charts, like the monthly, like the long term holders, like what the whales are doing, it still is pointing towards much higher price levels going into these coming weeks and end of year. So interesting stuff. A couple more charts and macro models I wanted to check out briefly. We look at the 200-week moving average heat map. Things are looking really nice. We're not overbought by any means. Obviously, once these dots start getting green, yellow, and red, that is the warning sign that, hey, might want to start distributing, taking a little bit of off our holdings and looking for a trend reversal. But even as breaking new all-time highs recently, we just haven't gotten there. It looks like we still have a lot more fuel in the tank. Logarithmic growth curves. If we take a look at this one, we're actually starting to form some support off of that middle curve ever since breaking it to the upside. So very promising that, this served as resistance in our previous market cycle when the trend ran up to 14K. Now we're actually back testing it and starting to form some support. So very promising from a macro perspective there. Relative unrealized profit and loss, still in the optimism / denial phase of the cycle, starting to push up on that, but we're not in the greed or euphoria stages in terms of Bitcoin. We might be in greed and euphoria stages based on how the meme coins have been behaving, but I think that there's a slight disconnection between those and Bitcoin at least the present moment, and the overall collective market cycle. Last one I'll take a look at is just reserve risk. And you can see, we're just not even close to that overheated level or even at the previous level, when we were at all-time highs recently at 60K. When you look at this level, it's just not paralleled by where we currently are in our cycle. So, when we look at all these macro data models, when we look at whale holdings, I think the picture is just becoming very clear here.
Thank you very much, CJ. Yeah, that lots of interesting stuff to take into account here, and especially when you consider the fact that we're starting a new month here. And I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. When we take a look at the weekly chart or the monthly chart, both of those charts looked poised for a breakout above all-time highs. But then when you take a look at the daily chart, like you said, we're seeing maybe a bit of consolidation, and I want to just talk a little bit more about that because I think you did a great job kind of talking about how the whales are playing a role in this market. But I want to elaborate on that just a little bit more because this is something we've seen in previous market cycles and is a very healthy dynamic in terms of, Bitcoin's overall market cycle and also, in general, the crypto market cycle. So let's take a look at what we're seeing here in Bitcoin. This is the daily chart. Like CJ pointed out, we've pulled back a little bit off our all-time highs, and that's not all that surprising, especially when you consider the price action in the preceding month and the preceding, 3 months. We came up off this bottom here in July, climbing very quickly to the 66K range. And lots of that, as we talked about during, that run up, came on the back of long-term holders and whales. So, CJ talked about whales. This is a little bit of a different chart, but very similar. Long-term holders. This did turn back a little bit as we pulled back, but as you can see now, it is starting to increase again as we have kind of retested that 58K level. So taking a look at Bitcoin here, what we can see when we take a look at, putting these pieces together, like CJ said, I think it paints a pretty clear picture. We have Bitcoin rising to new all-time highs. This confidence, brought in a lot of retail traders that allowed some of these long-term holders to distribute without price going down significantly because there were new buyers stepping in. That's exactly what this consolidation is telling us, that the whales are able to distribute, the whales and long-term holders, but they're able to do so into the hands of retail participants that are kind of allowing us to consolidate in this range. We can tell that there's retail participation in this market from a few different metrics. One, and one that we've been referencing often, is altcoin performance. And one way to look at that is in terms of Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance, I think, is setting up to have a very, very interesting month here, perhaps a very negative month for Bitcoin dominance, which would mean a very positive month for the more risk on altcoins. We've been talking about this level of 44%, marked by the 20 period smooth moving average, as a highly critical level. Historically, a clean break below this level has led to a rotation into the altcoins. And now, today, for the first time in a very long time, we are showing a clean break below this level, a clean break below 44%, retesting the low 40s in the 43% range. So this, for me, this 20 period smooth moving average is a great indication of when you should perhaps be looking to increase your altcoin holdings. This doesn't mean that Bitcoin is gonna, go down. It doesn't mean Bitcoin's heading back down to retest 50K. It just means that the alts are gonna outperform Bitcoin in the interim, and that is something we've seen historically at the end of market cycles. And given what we're seeing in terms of the market dynamics here, where Bitcoin is mostly being bolstered by long-term holders, institutions, and whales, whereas alts are more driven by retail capital, it makes sense that when we get to this euphoric stage that CJ was kind of talking about, that most of the speculation from retail traders goes into the altcoins. So now that we're breaking below this critical level and Bitcoin is looking like it's, perhaps set to consolidate, at least just in the interim, I think now is a great time to be looking at some of these altcoins to, really get that parabolic performance that everyone loves at the end of market cycles. So, like we said, we're already starting to see it a little bit. Mana ripping up, Engine ripping up, and now today we have assets like Dot showing some very, very positive price action, and that's on the back of a somewhat sideways trading Bitcoin. So I think the risk on markets here, CJ, I think people are ready to start looking for those altcoin gains, and I think that means that November and perhaps even December are going to be some pretty exciting months. So that's all I got in terms of Bitcoin, but I'll pass it back to you here.
Yeah, I guess we can go into Doge of the day. I was wondering, do you want to take a look at Bitcoin dominance at all? I haven't checked it, but I did
Yeah,
want
I
to.
just showed Bitcoin dominance a little bit there, breaking
Okay,
below
cool.
44%. So
Excellent. All right, yeah. Why don't we go into Doge of the day then? Dot on the move. I really like Dot. Monty and I were just talking about that before the show. Really on the move these last couple hours, but I still think that one could go 200, potentially 300 end of market cycle. It is my second largest alt holding. Something we kind of talked about buying last week, and something that I'm still relatively bullish on. But in terms of Doge of the day, I just kind of want to recap helium, something that we talked a lot about last week. We're starting to see some consolidation above these all-time highs. So this is something that I'm thinking about scaling into, or just buying outright at these prices, looking for continuation to some of these upper levels, because it just has not showed any real weakness just yet. And even if we are to come down, I think it's much more highly likely that we experience something kind of like this, kind of like a consolidation before another push higher. So if you want to wait for that, potential decrease or decline to one of these previous support levels, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't be opposed to grabbing a little bit today either way as well. Also, another one that I want to talk about is OMG. OMG is just very postured, very well, I should say. Um, there's characteristics in the market right now that I want to pay attention to, and that has to do in the altcoin market with assets specifically that are trending like this. When you look at their 20 smooth moving average, you want it to be, ascending, and you want it to be a form of support for this uptrend. If you look at this, ever since August and late July, buying off of this 20 smooth moving average has been a pretty viable strategy for OMG as it continues to, previous all-time, or it continues beyond previous all-time highs. So that's one that I'm definitely looking for in terms of bullish continuation. But, there's a lot of assets with this general structure. DOT is one of them. And, I had a friend text me this morning, ask, which altcoins do I like? Which altcoins am I buying? And, he was looking at some of the laggards. Let me just give an example. There are many with this particular structure, but the one specifically that I was talking about just had to do with Neo. And I'm not trying to pick on Neo. I like the project. I just don't think it's the time yet to scale in, because when you look at the 20 smooth moving average, price is still below it, and this is not a trending market. That is a range bound market. So the assets that I want to buy are assets that are trending already. And so I'm not saying I don't like Neo. I'm not saying I don't like the project. I just want to wait to see it trend a little bit, to see that moving average actually turn up before I enter that position. So those are the conditions and I guess the criteria that I'm looking for in terms of the altcoin markets and doges of the day. But I'm interested to hear what you have to share as well, Monty.
Good stuff. Thank you very much for that, CJ. Yeah. So for my doges of the day today, I have a couple I want to take a quick look at, but I want to start, um, you know, by justifying my doge of the day here. So one thing that we like to look for is we kind of CJ and I have talked about this a lot, but this sort of flow of capital model and how Bitcoin needs to charge. We saw it break into new all-time highs. That brought back a lot of confidence, and that allowed the alts to run as well. And we can take that a step further by taking a look at Ethereum as well. And I think that looking at ETH right now and what we're seeing in terms of the price action over the last just couple of weeks here, I think can tell us some pretty interesting things about the overall market. And historically, we've taken a look at ETH's price action and what it's meant for the entire market. Because when ETH tends to make these new all-time highs, it's on the back of tremendous amount of retail speculation that drives gas fees to new all-time highs. And then in turn, it drives people to look elsewhere in terms of, not just getting into downstream assets, but also developing projects or minting NFTs. That sort of thing tends to be a little bit hindered when ETH is making new all-time highs. So it's an interesting relationship where we have NFTs feeding into ETH making new all-time highs, like we saw back here in August with that CryptoPunk mania. ETH was seeing tremendous speculation, spike to 4K before, selling off hard. But like we keep saying, this came at the expense of ETH, but it benefited many other assets as well. So I want to look at three assets that have performed tremendously well when ETH has made a new all-time high and then pulled back a little bit as a result of gas fees. So I want to start by taking a look at AVAX here. AVAX is one, as you can see just by looking at this chart here, during that period of time that I was just showcasing when ETH was making new all-time highs and pulling back, that was really the start of this tremendous price action for AVAX. Looking at the volume profile, it tells you that this was a real shift in the paradigm in terms of speculation. This was when people really started to consider AVAX a true alternative to ETH. And, we can see that from the amount of speculation it saw, the price action it saw, and now the fact that it's holding above this moving average as, the volume kind of diminishes a little bit. I think it could potentially, run again as we see ETH break into new all-time highs, and then perhaps consolidate a bit. Another one that I want to take a look at it is HBAR. We'd been watching HBAR last week as it had kind of entered this wedge formation. It broke out, but now is pulling back a little bit towards the top of this wedge. I still think HBAR is poised to perform tremendously well in November, especially if we see ETH continue to kind of climb. This is another one, as you can see here, in September, saw a tremendous amount of speculation as people looked elsewhere for alternatives to the Ethereum network. HBAR has tremendously high throughput, great transactions per second capability, low fees. So obviously, people were looking to this network when ETH was incredibly congested. And the last one I'll hit is Atom. This is, very similar in terms of AVAX, in terms of what we're seeing technically. But also we had this, wedge formation kind of emerging last week. It broke out before pulling back immediately. But overall, I still think that this formation is looking strong. Also, from a more macro perspective, we have this sort of cup and handle emerging with a breakout level of about $45. So, this is another one that I think its relationship to ETH is going to be very important to note here. And I think now that we're entering the month of November with ETH at all-time highs and hitting a little bit of resistance, gas fees still very high, NFT speculation with assets like Mana and Engine very high, all very similar market conditions to what we had back here. That was an extremely positive catalyst for both Atom, HBAR, and AVAX. So a few doges of the day to look at here. I think there'll be many more to look at throughout this month, but I just wanted to bring those three to your radar here today.
Thank you for that, Monty. See, Vincent asks, Shiba, please. Only thing I'm going to say about Shiba is like in the short term, if you want to jump in on the backs of the Reddit traders, I'm not saying do it, but that's your choice. It certainly could run in the short term, but overall, when you look at where it's come from and who's buying it, like it already has a market cap of $40 billion. You have people who aren't investing in it because of the fundamentals or aren't willing to be necessarily loyal to it. And Doge went to a market cap of like 80 billion at its top. So realistically, I don't know if the market cap of SHIB goes over 100 billion. I seriously doubt that will happen. So basically, you're looking at a 2x or 100% increase, like max. And I just think there are so much better opportunities in the market that could do that with a much better risk reward ratio because Sheep has just already gone up so much. Like people want to take some profit eventually. Monty, I'm not gonna go any further into that, but
No, you're good. Yeah, and one thing, CJ, that is almost reminiscent of what we saw with Doge back in the end of 2020, is if you want to trade this thing, that's great. There's there was plenty of money to be made there. Whether there's still money to be made there, that's yet to be seen. But if you're trading it, don't be trading it under the delusion that this thing has, any fundamental utility or anything like that. That's typically what we see at the end of like these waves of hype. People that are trading this thing recognize that it is a meme coin and it can go down very, very quickly on the back of, just, a negative news catalyst or even just, one whale trader dumping sheep tokens. And there are plenty of whales that could definitely move the market. But one thing that I've seen that reminds me of kind of what we saw with Doge at the end of 2020 is people starting to say, starting to look at as more than a meme trade. They're starting to say, "Oh, we looked at Tesla's source code and they're, perhaps considering taking it as payment." That doesn't matter. This thing is still, a meme token. Even if it gets listed on Robinhood, I don't see, like CJ said, really the thing that's the ceiling here is the market cap. This thing has reached a tremendously high market cap, and it's going to take a lot of capital to keep this thing moving. So I think in all likelihood, it consolidates, doesn't climb too much higher, but don't trade it with the delusion of that it's something more than it is. It's a meme token, which can give you gains, but it can also take them away very quickly. So that's all I got to say about Sheeb, CJ.
voice of reason from a Sheeb trader himself, ladies and gentlemen. But nonetheless, want to say thank you to Voyager as the sponsor of our show. Congrats with all the recent developments they've been making and all the hard work they've been putting in towards the app. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, today was Voyager Interest Day. 12% interest on Polkadot. So congrats to the dot holders who not only one got paid out, but also had a nice increase in price recently. So love to see that. Also, if you'd like to learn more about crypto trading education curriculum, or join a community of traders in our crypto trading room with Monty and I ourselves, you can check out that and all of the features included at the link below, marketrebellion.com/try crypto. You can try the first week for just $7, but we appreciate that. And with that being said, Monty, I'll pass it to you. Any final thoughts here?
No, just very excited for the week, very excited for the month. Things are shaping up, looking like it's going to be a very positive month for crypto. So we're excited. We've been waiting all year for this. Like CJ said, we'll be hanging out in the room. Also, this Wednesday, we'll be doing another webinar with the Oracle, AJ Monty. We'll be taking a look at some crypto assets, demystifying some various myths about crypto. So that'll be on Wednesday. Looking forward to that as always. But thank you guys so much for watching. Really going to be an exciting week, an exciting month, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys in the crypto room. So have a great rest of your day. We will see you again tomorrow, and take care.